Do you want to publish a book, but you aren't sure if you're ready? Are you worried about possibly publishing too soon? In today's video, you'll discover 5 warning signs that can help you identify that you might be publishing too soon and that you may not be ready to publish just yet, and why it could be wise for you to wait. Hey, y'all, welcome to today's Live with Lisa. If you're new here, my name is Lisa, and I create videos to help you learn how to write and live God's way. If you're looking to honor God with both your life and your writing, this is the place for you. I also want you to know that every week we go live in partnership with Our Given Purpose Ministries, which is an incredible ministry founded by my dear friend, Tori Slaughter, that helps you to grow in your walk with God and get plugged into godly community. So not only do we go live every week on YouTube and on Instagram, but on the Our Given Purpose Facebook Ministries page as well. And so make sure you get connected there so you can learn more about that incredible ministry. So I think that this is an interesting topic, when how to identify when you're not ready to publish. We talk a lot about when people are ready to publish and really encouraging them to move forward with the process. I think a lot of writing and publishing experts talk about that and are really encouraging writers to move forward, but we don't talk as much about what it looks like when you're not ready and how to identify that. And so I think that this live today is going to be so helpful for you if you're really going back and forth a lot about whether or not you should publish, and really help you to drill down and identify some of those issues that may be at play for you. The first reason I want to point out is that you haven't healed from your past. This is the first reason why you may not be ready to publish. You haven't healed from your past. That's reason number one. And so this especially would apply to you if you're looking to publish either a memoir or some type of book that has an autobiographical nature to it. If it's anything that is dealing with your life, your experiences, your history, things that you have been through personally, you want to be really sure that you have healed from your past. And so I recommend for anybody that's writing a book that's in line with this to really make sure that you are getting plugged into a combination of Christian-based therapy, good counseling, getting into discipleship through your local church, and just any kind of resources to help you in your mental, emotional, and psychological health. And the reason why is because publishing your story involves making, in many cases, some very personal things about your life public. And that can be very traumatic for people who aren't expecting it in ways that they aren't expecting. And if you're not prepared for that process of going through that. And so you really want to have a good support team around you to make sure that you've done the work internally to be able to put those things out into the world and to be okay with that process. Having people, just be talking about certain things that you've been through when you're promoting your book, for example, or answering questions from people who may be asking you about your life and things that you've been through, interacting with people on social media who may be not that nice, to be honest, in talking about you and making assumptions about you and your past. These are all things that you want to think about and really be sure that you have the mental and emotional support and the strength even to be able to handle those kinds of details of your life being out there in the public, and just being able to handle just kind of some of the strain that can come with that. It's really important that you think through that and that you're honest with yourself about that, and that you have, again, that support to help you deal with those issues. Some people just need to keep certain things in a private journal, and that's okay. There may be things there really should be some things that you never release and that you never put out in public, just for privacy purposes, and just to be able, because it's just part of your story that might be particularly sensitive. So it takes wisdom to be able to identify when you're not ready. And I really encourage people to take that time, to not rush through, especially if you are telling your story and things about your personal life. The second reason you might not be ready to publish just yet is Kind of in a similar vein, you have relationships that could be negatively affected by the release of your book. You have relationships that could be negatively affected by the release of your book. And so again, this is going to impact people who are publishing either a memoir or something that has an autobiographical angle to it. It could be a devotional, for example, where you're talking about your life. It could be even in some ways, it might even lean into fiction a little bit. It depends on how you're approaching it and what you're trying to do. But anything where you're writing about your life and things that you have been through personally, you want to keep this in mind. And so it doesn't mean that you can't publish. It just means you have to be thoughtful about who could possibly be impacted by your story being out there in the world. Think through, who you're writing about, what you're saying, how they might interpret what you're saying, and how they might judge what you're saying based on, your perception of things that happened. A lot of times when we write about our stories, everyone is not the hero. Some people are not portrayed in a positive light because the things they did weren't positive. But they may not be aware of that until that book is published. And so you need to understand that that's a possibility and just be willing to weigh the personal costs of releasing what you feel God is telling you to release, and recognize that you may have some backlash and some fallout that happens in some of those relationships from people who are impacted as a result. Again, doesn't mean you shouldn't publish. It just means you need to be thoughtful about the process. And you may even need to seek professional advice from professional editors and attorneys, people who can walk you through some of the legal implications of what you might be writing. We don't want to, certainly don't want to say things about people that aren't true, but understand that there can be some ramifications in writing our story in ways that impact other people, and we have to be mindful of that. Reason number 3 why you may want to push pause on publishing, at least for now, is that you're unwilling to accept constructive feedback about your story. You're unwilling to accept constructive feedback about your story. Now, we all believe that our books are wonderful and amazing. We're excited about them. We many times are confident in what we've written, especially if we've worked really hard on it. And so we want to, it's normal to be excited about what you wrote and even protective of it to a certain extent. But it's important that you don't just completely ignore and reject any constructive criticism that you will receive about your book, especially if you're not willing to accept that criticism before you publish. It is so key and so critical that you do not write your book in isolation, that you don't write it just by yourself and then publish it immediately after. That if you do that, it will not be the best book that it can be. I can say that hands down without any hesitation, because we're so close to our books, because we're close to our stories, because they're personal to us, because we love them. It literally keeps us from seeing their flaws clearly. We have blind spots, and that's why we need other people to come in and give their encouragement, their feedback, their advice, their wisdom, their solutions for how to help us get better. And so whether you are traditionally publishing or pursuing self-publishing, you need to have input from other people, whether they be editors, literary agents, publishers, if you're working with a publisher and you have a publishing deal, or a professional editor, as I said, writing coaches and writing mentors as well. You may need feedback from critique partners, other writers, and from beta readers who represent your ideal audience. Either way, you need to have a variety of feedback from different people before you put your book out there, to help you get better, to help you improve as a writer in general, and just to help set your book up for success. So if you find that you're someone that doesn't take feedback well, you feel the need to defend yourself and to kind of lash out and resist any feedback that you get, you may have some work to do internally to really get yourself ready for the process of editing and revising your book and getting it ready for publication. You got to take that time and be honest with yourself about that, because you just can't improve as a writer if you're not willing to get that feedback. And not only to hear the feedback, but to take it to heart and to actually make changes, meaningful changes based on what you hear. You can't just, if you get pages of feedback from an editor and all you're doing is changing a comma here and there and fixing typos, then you're not really receiving what that editor said. And you're not really making changes that are the necessary changes for you to make in order for you to really make your book better. And honestly, it's going to hurt you in the long run. So you need to be honest with yourself about whether or not you really do know how to accept constructive feedback. I'm not talking about feedback that is rude or mean or harsh or just, trying to be hurtful. That we discard. But feedback from professionals and people who know the craft of writing, who are trying to help you, who are doing their best to, who have your best interest at heart, that feedback we listen to, that feedback we need to take seriously. And that feedback we need to really look at ways to make changes that are in line with that. So that's very important. And then reason number 4 is kind of along those same lines, but it's really more of a broader issue. And that is you don't know how to deal with rejection. This is the 4th reason why you may not be ready to publish your book right now, is that you don't know how to deal with rejection. If you are someone who just struggles with rejection in general, this is going to be hard for you. But this is especially true if you decide to traditionally publish. And that means you want to publish your book with one of the big publishers that are out there. That means you want to get a literary agent and you want to actually sign a book deal with a publisher. That is what's known as traditionally publishing. If you want to do that and that is your goal, you have to get comfortable with rejection because it is baked into the traditionally publishing process all throughout. You're going to get rejected by literary agents because most of them will not want your book and will not want to sign you as a client. You're going to have to get rejection from editors who work with publishers and have been hired by publishers, and they're going to reject your book. You're going to get rejected by the publishers themselves. There's whole committees that decide whether or not they're going to offer you a book deal. And so they're going to reject you. And then even if you get a book deal, you will still get rejection from book reviewers, people who, are going to read your book ahead of time and may not want to read it, or they may not like it and they may have a negative review about it. And obviously from readers themselves, once the book actually is published and comes out into the world. And even if you choose to self-publish, and you think, I don't want to deal with that. I don't want to go through all of that rejection. Let me just bypass that and self-publish myself. You can't avoid it because you will still experience rejection that way. It may be a little bit less of it and not at every stage of the writing process, but you will still experience it just from people who don't want to buy your book, or people who leave negative reviews about your book. I did a live stream a little while ago, I think it was a few weeks ago, talking about how to respond when people don't support your writing. That's no matter how you publish. You're going to get that no matter what, regardless. You're going to experience that. And so if you are someone who takes rejection really personally, and you don't know how to basically be able to kind of get up and keep moving and work through that, then you're going to have a really, really difficult time publishing. A lot of people, I'll be honest, a lot of times when we see, I see stories in the media about authors behaving badly, snapping at fans, and, really responding negatively to criticism about their book. For them, a lot of times those authors are people who haven't dealt with rejection and they don't know how to deal with it on some level. And so they're going through a lot of frustration because they haven't learned tools to help them deal with rejection and to not, kind of lash out at people publicly, right? They don't have the tools in place to help them do that. And It's really, painful to see that when that happens. Happens with traditionally published authors and self-published authors in different ways. But regardless, that's a skill you have to learn if you want to publish. You have to learn how to take rejection well, how to process it, and how to keep moving. I've done several live streams talking about that. How do we deal with rejection? How do we deal with people not loving our book? How do we deal with people not supporting us? How do we deal with things not going the way that we thought they were going to go? And so we have a lot of tools, especially as kingdom writers. We have the Holy Spirit, we have godly community, we have the presence of God, we have the word of God. We have so much at our disposal to help us through that process. So we want to make sure that we take advantage of that in order to really thrive when we publish our books. But the key thing I want to stress and drive home here is to not take rejection personally. It might feel personal to you. It very rarely is. It might feel personal to you. It might feel like someone is just trying to drive the knife in and just trying so hard to hurt your feelings. 9 times out of 10, that's not the case. And once we understand that, when we understand that rejection is not personal, it is not directed specifically at us, then it makes it easier for us to go through the process, work through it, and then figure out how to respond and what to do next. That also takes us back to reason number 1. You haven't healed from your past. I'm not a therapist. I'm not a psychologist. I'm not a counselor, but that's why I encourage people to go. Because when you do process your past, when you process the pain you've been through, you process your rejection, you process the disappointment that you've been through in your own personal history, it equips you to be able to manage those feelings when people reject you and reject your book. And so you really need those tools to help you do that. And going through that process of healing from your past is really going to help you and set you up to be able to deal with that well. All right. All right. And then reason number 5, why you are not ready to publish your book just yet, if this is the case, that's probably true for you, is you're not willing to invest the money to publish well. You're not willing to invest the money to publish well. This is especially true if you want to self-publish. It can be true if you want to traditionally publish as well, because a lot of writers, even when they are partnering with a big publisher, they're a lot of times still going to invest their own money. That's just something they choose to do in order to give them a better chance of success. And that's up to them. They don't have to do that in many cases, but it might be something they choose to do. But with self-publishing, you are absolutely going to need to invest your own resources, your own funds, because it's in the name. You're self-publishing. So you are funding and investing in your publishing, the publishing process of publishing your book. And so self-publishing is like any other business. You get out of it what you put into it. And so if you decide to take shortcuts and do things as cheaply as possible without thinking about the quality, if you decide not to invest in certain things and you decide to do it yourself, or have someone that do it who doesn't have the background in that area, you're setting yourself up for trouble and disappointment. Because again, you get out of the process what you put into it. If you just, there's a couple of major expenses with the self-publishing process that it's very difficult to avoid them. You really can't avoid them in most cases. And that's working with an editor and working with a professional book designer. Those are 2 expenses that I really highly, highly recommend and believe that writers need to invest in and be willing to put in the financial investment if they want their book to do well and be successful. If you design your own cover and you're not a professional graphic designer, it shows. People can tell the difference. If you edit your own book yourself and you don't hire a professional editor, again, people can tell the difference. I know there's a lot of talk out there about AI, and I think there's a lot of wonderful things that those tools can do. At some point I'm hoping to talk about some of that and some things I've learned over the years. I'm not ready to talk about that yet, but there's a lot of opinions out there about it. That I will say. There's a lot of opinions about AI, a lot of opinions either highly for it or highly against it. And I think, for a lot of writers who are self-publishing, I think there is a danger in one extreme or the other, where you are completely avoiding it in everything you do, or you are completely reliant on it and that you rely on it for everything. I think that the best place to be is somewhere in the middle. But especially when it comes to editing and book design, you're going to get into trouble if you rely completely on AI or completely on doing it yourself, and you don't have any type of human element involved in that. It gives the book a different feel. And it really does kind of tend to look different when you're taking people completely out of the process, or taking yourself or taking professionals completely out of the process. And so I want to caution you on that. If you're not willing to make that investment, at the very least in editing and book design, and the cover design, you're really tread carefully, because a lot of times those things make more of a difference than we realize. Many times as writers, we don't, and this really applies to a lot of different things, right? We don't know what we don't know. And the professionals are professionals for a reason. And so if you are choosing to completely bypass that process, it's going to make a difference in the quality of the work that you produce. And so, I think a lot of writers get into the process of self-publishing and they might experience sticker shock because they were expecting it to cost less than it might. But there are ways to, I think if you're willing to do your research and really understand the process and understand what it is you're trying to do, then you can manage those costs, but you can't avoid them completely. You cannot completely bypass them if you want your book to do well and to achieve the goals that you have set for it. So you need to factor in those costs if you're looking to publish and you're looking to self-publish well and to be successful at it. So make sure you do your research, make sure you set a budget for yourself, and make sure you take the time to really think through how you want to invest in that publishing process and what that investment is going to look like. If you skip all of that, you're not going to do well. So something I really, want to recommend and encourage writers to do is to really, if they're not willing to make that investment, then you need to take a step back and really wait, and think through when you might be ready to make that investment. So if you found this video helpful for you today, if it encouraged you, if it gave you some things to think about, I hope that it challenged you in terms of what to think through in terms of the publishing process. Really a lot of mindset things that we're talking about today, in terms of how you approach things and the limiting beliefs that we don't always know we have. Those can many times be the biggest barrier in terms of making it difficult for us to go through with publishing and to really publish to the quality and with the excellence that we should. We have been given, again, so much in terms of what God has empowered us and equipped us to do, but we have to break through those mindsets that are getting in the way. We have to take the time to work through those emotional issues that we may have, the trauma that we may have experienced, and we need to take time to think through how our work will impact other people as well. Be really thoughtful and mindful about that and how we do that, how we approach what we write, for the glory of God, because ultimately this is about Him. This is about His glory and His kingdom. And so we want to represent Him well. So if you are not in the place to do that, it's okay. I want you to come out of this feeling, if you've decided that you might need some more time, that you might need to give yourself, that you might need to do some more research, you might need to take some more time to work through some issues that you have. That's okay. I want to encourage you in that. Don't be ashamed. Don't feel condemned. Don't start beating yourself up about that. That is wisdom to know when you're not ready for something. And so understand that if you need more time, then just take some time to pray through that. Find professional experts and people who can help you in the process of trying to publish the book that God has laid on your heart. So take that time to do that and be intentional about that process. And I believe that God will be with you and that He will guide you as you go through that. Okay, so again, I hope this video helped you. If you found it helpful, make sure you subscribe and like and share it with someone who needs some help and needs some practical wisdom as they're going through the publishing process. And make sure you leave a comment below letting me know what you are working on and what will be helpful for you. If you have any questions about the writing process as well, about writing God's way, I would love to hear from you. So that is it for now. I will see you next week in the next live with Lisa. And until next time, take care and God bless. Bye, y'all.